Knights at the Round Table, a round-table discussion on speculative fiction books and film.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Knights at the Round Table. Today we are discussing the 1985 movie Legend with my guests, who you may recognize, Martin and Rupert. I'm Nathan. I'm not Sonia. So we will start with general impressions of the movie. Martin.
So this movie is a Ridley Scott movie, which means it's complicated. There's two cuts of this movie, like all of Ridley Scott's movies.
There's several cuts. There's much more than two cuts.
Depending on what version of this movie you've watched, I think will color how you view it. Because I watched the 1985 version, that's the one that I grew up with. It was re-released again in 2002. Apparently it changed a little bit, gets a little different. There's different endings depending on where you are in the world, even 1985, so it's a weird film. I think my 1985 self loves this movie. I think now it doesn't quite work as well, but hey, it's a child me will always love Legend.
I have a lot of the same feelings. It's a movie that is absolutely still beautiful, gorgeous on screen. I'm not sure a lot of things still hold up quite as well as I remember them.
This was one of my big rotation movies. Legend, Willow, Labyrinth, Last Unicorn, Raggedy Ann and Andy. Scare the crap out of you kids movies. I remember watching the hell out of this movie. A lot. I probably haven't seen it in 20 years. I watched it again last night, and apparently I remembered nothing of it. It's a very painterly movie. It's not a good movie, but it is a great watch. There's a lot of things that I can't believe, like, my brain completely edited out, and there's a lot of things where I'm like, yes, give it to me. And I guess we'll get into that in detail at some point.
Indeed.
What are your thoughts on it?
Gorgeous movie. Let's talk about the cinematography, because it's a movie that didn't have a lot of special effects. It had a lot of prosthetics and makeup and costumes that were absolutely gorgeous, and still to this day, like, you couldn't make a movie like this today, because people would force CGI on you and it just wouldn't look the same.
You'd need Guillermo del Toro at the helm, and with a tight rein. In fact, I'm pretty sure Guillermo del Toro kind of used Tim Curry's prosthetics as an anchor for his Hellboy. If nothing else, they got the nipples right. I'm just saying, that man never has his shirt closed the entire time. Somebody had to go, we need to pay attention to these areas.
Hey, everybody needs a job.
Hey. I'm not saying they were wrong.
And so, this is where, as somebody who just did a haunted house right around, Halloween, did a lot of prosthetics, putting that on my wife. Looking at this film, it is so cool for all of the prosthetics. And I think that's why me as a kid, like, you look at this film and it's phenomenal for 1985.
Yeah.
The problem is it has the 1985 limitations of movement and things you could do. So the monsters are like, let me grab the bull. But then, looks gorgeous, but yeah, your actors are very restricted.
True, but I have to say, in certain spots, they probably outdo what a lot of people now do. That beginning scene with Blix and just the mouth and the nose and the animus you can feel. And it's almost like the mouth of Sauron from Lord of the Rings, without any CG, and it just gives you the absolute creeps. And I'll forgive a lot for practical effects.
Yeah.
I watch Labyrinth, and every time they get to the fiery dance part, I'm like, oh no, they did it. They went for something else. This is one. There's not a spot in this movie where I go and then go, that is like a matte painting. That is, somebody rotoscoping. None of that stands out like that.
Well, I think, like, you've got Meg, I think she's Mucklebones.
Yeah.
And you've got the water and it's dripping off her, and
So
she
good.
looks so gross.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
problem is acting alongside these things is like they have to do a lot of cuts,
Yep.
which you wouldn't expect in a more modern version because actors are very limited. Like, like, oh, I'm looking over here. Well, to get Meg to turn around, you have to cut, and then she's got to kind of reposition and move.
Yeah, but I mean, like, admittedly, they
Oh.
cast this movie right, because if
Yeah.
they got to cut, if you're going to cut to somebody, cut to baby Tom Cruise with his original teeth and no pants.
it's-
I mean, come on, eh? You know,
This was
he's
one of
not
the
David
things that-
Bowie levels of sexual awakening or anything, but come on, the guy
Yeah,
is he's
Oh, yeah,
No,
look,
Scott's there.
I'll agree with you on that. The casting in this
yeah.
is very good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that I love most about the casting is Tim Curry. Tim
Yeah.
Curry is even with all of that stuff that makes his face
So
like this
expressive.
big, he's still so expressive and sexy. Like he's a giant red beast thing, and he's still sexy as hell.
And he's got that diction and the way of speaking
Yeah.
and going for darkness as the seductor, and there's just so much going on there, and I love it. I mean, I absolutely love that. In fact, if I was to go back, the only things that I really remember about this movie from childhood are almost always to do with either Blix or Tim Curry or Una.
So, I think back to when I first saw this movie, and in my mind, I remember this epic sword battle between Tim Curry and Tom Cruise with the unicorn horn, and they're fighting back and forth, and finally Tom Cruise stabs him. And I watched the movie again, and I'm like, oh, this was not Daredevil in a hallway fight scene.
No,
This
not
is
quite.
Tim Curry, like, Tom
Tom
Cruise doing some rolls, and then
You did not look when they rolled up this adventuring party. Tom Cruise did not show up as the ranger. He showed up as the druid. Okay, guys.
Oh, yeah.
This guy's got no weapons, proficiencies at all. I love that part of it. I barely remembered any of that from the movies and whatnot as a kid. And watching it again, it was interesting. I doubt that my brain will see fit to remember it too much farther past this recording. So enjoy it while we can.
And Tim Curry's the devil.
Oh,
in
yeah.
a good way.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's, he does such a good job as the darkness. Like, it just, but I think it also reflects a lot of the 1980s of like, there is an everlasting darkness that will take over the world, and thank gosh we have this one person who will stand up and bring forth the light. And like, well, we've gotten some better storylines this time
The
going
face
on.
of innocence and purity. Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Pre-Scientology.
Yeah. It's...
Again, original teeth. That man had a killer smile.
Oh, yeah. It's something to see him in some of his first roles.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're like, whoa. But at the same point, it's very, like, I hate to say it, the communism versus the West sort of mentality. If there's this darkness that'll take over the world, if we do not stand up for all that is virtuous, and, since that time we've kind of progressed on storylines, like...
I don't
yeah.
mind it being a simple storyline. I don't think that's bad. My thing is, and I think this is something that, as people living in 2019, we kind of take for granted. This is not a story that would be told as a single movie if you tried to write this nowadays. There is
Yeah,
so
for sure.
much crammed into this. I mean, if this was a series, that whole thing in the bog with Meg Mucklebones would be an episode.
Yeah.
Right? That's 5 minutes here.
I want to just bring one thing that I really disliked about the movie is the woman as corrupter trope, which was just so like really there's so little story, but you still get to add this in it.
Yeah, there's things you could call problematic with this. I like the fact that she goes along with it just long enough for her to have an unexpected turnaround. Which is totally telegraphed. The first part of that movie, the whole setup and everything with her running around, I forgot she was a princess. At least that makes some of her actions somewhat explainable, but
I forgot she was in the movie. I thought it was just Tom Cruise saving the unicorns.
You know something?
Until I rewatched
The
it.
funny part is, I think they cribbed a lot of like the dance and everything like that for something like Mirror Mask.
Yeah.
Like I can almost draw a direct line from they did this and there we go right here, and I think they did it way better in Mirror Mask.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is also one of those movies that might have. Because it came so early, there wasn't there was this nexus of a bunch of movies of this type and then nothing for a long time, that when we go back into it, so much has cribbed from the visual style and the storytelling and whatnot, and taken the good parts of it and turned it into even better stuff, that it's almost like, no, this wasn't really as cliche as we think of when it was released, because you've just been you're just now used to seeing more of this because it influenced so much. I would be really interested to know, between the old adventure stories of the 30s and whatnot, in Egypt and all that stuff, where they did like all the sailing stories and almost sandal type stuff, to this movie, how many other times between 1930 and 1985 did they use the mirror trick? Because I can tell you that every single video game from the 90s to now, if you have a tomb or if you have any kind of puzzle, we've used that trick. I've done that so many times.
Yeah.
I've done it in Baldur's Gate. I've done it in at least one or two Uncharted games. But before they did it in that movie, you'd probably have to go back to like the old and then
It's not something that features a lot, and it's.
I mean, you see glimpses of it in the 90s with like The Mummy and with The Fifth Element, both of those using it as like little gimmicks and whatnot. But I mean, as a full-on puzzle, I absolutely think that was somebody was like, oh yeah, we're stealing that and we're making that part of our game.
Yeah.
A little bit of trivia. Did you know that Meg Mucklebones was Robert Picardo?
So not till I looked this up, and I was like,
not until somebody told me earlier.
I was
like,
shocked.
oh my
I
God.
was like,
and it makes perfect sense after you find out. You're like, yeah, you know what? Yeah.
Yep. No, that tracks.
Do you know how Tim Curry was cast?
I do not know how to.
So actually, the director, Ridley Scott, went to see Rocky Horror Picture Show because he wanted to cast the guy who plays Riff Raff.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And then he saw Frankenfurter and he was like, oh no. No, that's my devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if the guys casting for Fern Gully watched Legend and go, oh yeah, that's Hexus right there. Oh, and he sings. Oh, we've got to get this now.
Yeah. It's, and there's a lot of breakout roles. Like, what is it, Mia Sara there, who plays the princess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that she forms one of her breakout roles in that, and then goes on to do Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, this movie has an incredible cast behind it.
Oh my God! Even the kid who played Gump, that performance was remarkable for a child actor.
Oh,
At no point in time was I thinking that character is a child.
Yeah.
Right? It's just that I'm like, oh, that's Puck.
Yeah.
Okay, we got you. We're going straight ahead with this. I mean, he annoyed the hell out of me, but I don't think that had anything to do with the actor.
No, I think
it was the character.
Yeah, and like I think you said it was. We've had a lot of stuff that's come since. Like if you take a look at Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, The Last Kingdom. Like there's a lot of really good fantasy that's come out in the last few years. And watching this again, you're like, oh, Hades fantasy, huh?
Yeah.
But we do get stuck
For kids.
Yeah.
For kids, yeah.
But I think we do get stuck in tropes. Like, look, 2015 was the year of the sky beam.
Yep.
If there was anything that was going to be a problem, we had a beam going into the sky. And, like, I think we're going to watch those movies back and be like,
wasn't
that
literally the cover for Fan Four Stick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Fan Four Stick, it was Suicide Squad, it was Ninja Turtles, like... if it came from the sky, Avengers.
Avengers did it early. They started the trend, you could say.
It's real weird, and like I think we'll look back like this is one of those movies that we look back on now. We're like, man, that was weird. Like it'll fit into its own segment, and we'll go 20 years down the road, and we'll be like, why did we fear the sky for like 5 years? And it'll fall into that same sort of category. And
How are we doing for time?
10 minutes.
Oh, cool. Okay, still a lot of things to do.
The nice thing is this is in the end it's a simple movie that they've couched in archetypes. It's absolutely aimed at children, which is probably why we all remember it much more fondly than we do on a second pass. It's back from an age where we scared kids, and it's nice to see some of that stuff coming back a bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is it for how dense it is with all the scenes and all the different set pieces and everything. You know, it's like I said, it's a very painterly movie.
Right.
It's gorgeous to watch. Sometimes not so great to listen to, but it's definitely some madman's idea put on screen.
So I would like to take this with my niece and nephew, who are 9 and 8, and show them Legend today, and see how they react, because I think that they would love this movie.
Absolutely.
My niece is all into horses and unicorns. My nephew's into demons and swords. Like, this would be a really cool movie, and I think the shoddy dialogue, that doesn't matter to kids.
No. You know something? I watched this with my daughter when she was probably between 8 and 10. Again, when we were introducing her to all this stuff, and she absolutely loved it. You know, all that stuff from our childhood that we've glommed onto, a lot of it does actually, strangely enough, hold up. It's not as, you know, we look back on stuff like Transformers and stuff like that, where it's all this product placement based, but you go to the movies, and like I said, stuff like Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, you know, Legend, The Last Unicorn, all this stuff kind of comes into this area where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of 80s there, but it's still really cool.
Yeah.
It may not be good, but I mean, it doesn't have to be good to spark the imagination, to get kids excited, to give them a little bit of that fear, you know, if only for just a little bit, to experience that catharsis.
It's, you know, like I look at, you know, what kids take out of a movie, and I guarantee that there's no 9-year-olds running a YouTube channel that is about the in-depth dissection of a 1980s movie. They would watch it, and they would go, that's great, all right, you be the devil now, and I'll be Tom Cruise. I'm like, ha! Oh, we can fight the darkness together. Quick, let's turn on a light. Ah, oh no, the lights have turned off. And, like, they would have a blast, and we'd be like, was the depiction of the girl problematic in this movie? Like, there's nobody that's going to look at that at that age group, where I think, as adults, we've all come back and revisit this and been like, oh, maybe
I don't
not
know.
so good.
Having been a little girl myself, looking at these kinds of movies and seeing, like, literally no positive female role models in it does, you do notice that as a little girl.
Which is something why, you know, I wouldn't feed a child nowadays a steady diet of just this stuff. There isn't enough diversity. There isn't enough, you know. Throw in Bumblebee. Bumblebee is, in my mind, it's a great example of a throwback to this kind of movie, where it's got enough of a turn on, a 2000 spin on this premise. And I'd love to see somebody do that with this kind of material.
Oh, I think you could revisit. This is a movie that you could revisit. You could redo from scratch today, very easily.
You wouldn't even have to redo it. There is so much just presented here as a mythos, as a world, as so dense. Like, just look at what they did with the Dark Crystal. I never would have thought that you could get a series out of that. It was perfect containment. But, like I said, you know, that whole thing with Meg Mucklebones, you could make that an episode of some awesome, you know,
miniseries.
And it could be the same Meg Mucklebones with a new character. It could be, you know, a little peasant girl in the forest who's not a princess, and maybe her prince or princess. You know, whatever you want. There's a lot of room for storytelling here. I think that one of the things that this does give you, and especially when we go back to that whole child's imagination part, it's not stifled. It's not, you know, cornered off into this little box or whatnot. You know, there is a story in a world that continues on after.
How are we doing for time?
5 minutes.
All right, we can move on to general impression. Well, final impressions and star ratings. Who wants to start?
So, I've got 2-star ratings for this. Child Martin is going to give this movie a 4 out of 5. I think, like I said, if I could go back to 10-year-old self, watching this on a night when my parents are out and our babysitter brought us over, and like, yeah, it was great. Adult Martin's got to look at this and be like, well, I love the practical effects. I love the cinematography in this. The story's I think if you approach it as an adult, you're only going to see a 2.5 rating on this movie. But if you're 10 and below, go have some fun. Like,
What about you?
I'm going to have to do the double rating thing on this one, too, because there's too much nostalgia involved in my appreciation of this movie. To break it down, this is a solid 5 out of 5 for a kid. As somebody who grew up with this movie and rewatched it and rewatched it and rewatched it and then stopped, this is always going to have a spot on my shelf for the nostalgia rotation. It's just formative. Oh dear Lord, it was a bit of a slog to rewatch as an adult with no children around. I am so glad that once we actually got Tim Curry on-screen presence and whatnot, there are so many good bits, good scenes, good things to take away from. It is a bad movie, though. It is not it's not great. It's bad in a totally earnest way, though. 2.5 stars, 2 stars. If you asked me to watch this again, there'd have to be special circumstances. I'd rather keep it in my nostalgia vault, unless now you ask me to watch this with a kid, or I can watch it with that kid and watch that child's face. I'm going for it.
yeah.
No question.
So I only have 1 rating for it because it's not enough in my nostalgia that child me remembers it very, very well. Tim Curry gets 1 whole star all by himself, just because Tim
I
Curry
gave him 2.
makes that movie. Well, the movie all in all gets 3 stars for me because Tim Curry gets a whole star. All right, Rupert picked the last movie, so Martin's gonna pick this one.
I am going with Spirited Away.
Ooh,
That
was
is a
Miyazaki.
fantastic movie.
It is a fantastic movie. It's my favorite Miyazaki.
Well, that's a great film to discuss.
Absolutely. Sometime in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Cool.
Spirited Away. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We hope that you enjoyed this review of Legend. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. If not, please do like and subscribe so you can keep watching our awesome, awesome videos. And thank you so much for stopping by. Bye.